was challenging and took a template of how to get this done, how to make your locations work, how to pare them down. So those were the things that I was the hardest on as an executive producer over there. Just kind of going, okay, does it work? If it doesn't work all the way, you can't shoot it here. If this doesn't happen, that's the practical side of me.
I'm very excited to chat with you, Sandy. I'm especially for Suburban Screams. It is such a fun show from the few episodes I've seen already. Now, of course, you and John go far back as far as career-wise. And John is someone who always tinkers around with projects for a little while. I'm curious when this concept first came about for him.
They approached us not long before we wound up shooting. I don't know. During the year before we shot. So, it was a concept presented to us by the production company, Diga. And we liked the concept. That's how we wound up doing it. It was kind of simple.
I mean, it feels like the perfect expansion since he's created, one of the most iconic suburban horror franchises to date. And so, but it also feels like such a unique direction for you both. I mean, you've obviously produced a lot of live productions, but for John, he's not done a lot of docudrama style productions. So what was that like for you both, exploring this newer genre, this newer format?
It was unusual for both of us. We both like new challenges. So when you present something new to us, it immediately perks our interest up. We don't like repeating the same thing over and over again. So the notion of combining unscripted and scripted and seeing if you could make unscripted compelling in a theatrical way without lying, without like suddenly making it into something else and making it a takeoff point for a different story, just seemed interesting. And to see if we could show a division of a network that you really could do it in an entertaining fashion and still have the truth behind it. That seemed interesting. And it was an evolving process with the production company and with the network to say, look, you can do this. And it means letting go a little bit of, a lot of documentary stuff and using the unscripted as touchstones during the scripted to say, yes, this really happened. Yes, these are real people. And this is really their story. So that was what got interesting along the whole process from scripting on through.
I love that balance. It really does, like you say, adds an extra level of intrigue as each story gets told. And I really find it interesting that the stories themselves range from urban legends to real people being stalked to straight up Ouija style horror movies. And so I'm curious if when you were approached with this concept, the stories were already set, or if you, John, and your team went out and looked for what stories you wanted to cover.
They were semi-set. They had a group of stories they wanted to do. And then we threw out the ones that just were either too paranormal-esque, too where there's really not any reality here. And tried to keep it in the realm of feasibility. What you really want is for people to come away with, what if that were me? And you wanted stories set from the victim's point of view. How are everybody knows, and I always use the Dahmer example. Everybody knows about Jeffrey Dahmer. Everybody knows about everything that he did and what happened. But how many people know about the Niecy Nash character, the woman that experienced it downstairs? And then what has her life been ever since? So anyone that experiences trauma is never the same afterward. You can say, oh, the murder was solved. Oh, we caught this. We did whatever. It's all wrapped up, but it's never wrapped up for the victim. And then in the case of the semi-paranormal, the Ouija board, that kind of thing, it doesn't matter whether you believe Ouija boards are real. It's a matter of people's truth becomes fact to them. And what do they live with ever after? And the idea was to have viewers think, okay, if I were at a beer bust party and I'm sitting around and it's a joke and everyone's playing with the Ouija board and we suddenly connect to the other side, would I ever feel the same afterward? If I really felt I saw the other side?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was more the focus of that. And, I think that, in the case of the phone stalker, that woman never has resolution because 6 years later, she's still being stalked and it's unsolvable. Bunny Man had a couple of true occurrences, but became myth and legend for over 100 years. And people still terrify their children with it to get them to come home in the dark. So, these neighborhoods are forever affected. These people are forever affected. I find that more interesting than the actual crimes.
I couldn't agree more, especially in regard to both Kelly and the phone stalker. Watching the interviewees felt very powerful as they really, opened themselves up to the camera. And I'm curious if you got to be there at all, or if you interacted with those people and how you and if you did, how you formed any kind of trust or bond with them in order to help them feel comfortable for that.
All of them. I was there for all of them. And, they were all very different personalities. Some of them are trapped in and are possessed by those memories. Or in the case of Beth in the phone stalker, she can't escape it. She has that big tremor. The interviewer was going to wrap up his interview, and I made him go back and ask that one question: have you always had that palsy? Have you always had the shakes? And she said, no, it started with the stalker. Things like the people with Bunny Man. The one woman who is the historian lives the Bunny Man. I mean, she writes the book. This is her claim to fame, is Bunny Man. She is as immersed in Bunny Man as if she'd been there and got attacked in the car. The guy who was the kid who broke into the Bunny Man's house, he lives the Bunny Man. So these people are kind of trapped in that moment. The guy with the Ouija board, I have no idea where he lives in his head, because in his mind, he fell in love with the ghost and she led him to her grave. But it's actually in the newspapers, he found the grave. So, if that's the reality of your experience, I think these people are stuck there. And there was a very good researcher who pre-interviewed these people. and knew that they were pretty effective. And some better than others. There's another one coming up that was an escaped serial killer who escaped twice and terrorized a town. And I was reminded of that story when the serial killer got out in Pennsylvania recently and terrorized a whole town just because he was out. And in the case of our story, the serial killer would escape and keep killing people in the same town. Terrifying.
Very much so. And so with that said, then what is it like working with the writers of the scripted segments and working with those directors to ensure that as much as you're delivering thrills, you're also staying true and respectful to the people that you've interviewed for this?
A lot of red penciling, to not draw outside the lines. There's a temptation sometimes to want to embellish the stories. And I really didn't feel we should do that. I felt that the real stories were good enough and that we didn't need to fictionalize their lives. So the scripted is not fictional. I mean, there'll be a moment maybe that is a hallucination and something that's made up to strengthen the vision or strengthen something, but it might be 20 seconds out of an hour. Outside of that, no, the things that are depicted are real.
Like I was saying, that's very respectful, but also then you did a great job of still finding a way to make that as enticing as possible for a scripted segment. Did you find any one story to be the most exciting or the most challenging to help put together?
There were practical problems with The House Next Door. That director was really facing a tough challenge because of trying to find two houses that looked American. We were shooting in the Czech Republic, and it was hard to find two houses aligned so that it was feasible. A kid was looking from one house to the other, and it was just practical shooting problems. There were practical problems with making Czech Republic look like America. Things like that. Trying to make sure that we were able to shoot. These were low budget and had to be done fast. Most of those episodes were shot in 4 days. So trying to keep the production values high to give the viewers the most high quality camera work, sets, all of that within a very short amount of time. Just took planning. And I thought that the directors, John, Jan, Michelle, and Jordan did one, try and keep that level high, was challenging, and took a template of how to get this done, how to make your locations work, how to pare them down. So those were the things that I was the hardest on as an executive producer over there. Just kind of going, okay, does it work? If it doesn't work all the way, you can't shoot it here. If this doesn't happen, that's the practical side of me.
I'm glad that you pushed for it, because in the 3 episodes that I've seen so far, they all look fantastic. Especially the Bunny Man. The production values on that are haunting, to say the least. I see I'm almost at a
good forest.
I see I'm almost out of time. So before I let you go, I was also a big fan of Body Bags back in the day, and I loved John's on-camera work in that one. And I'm curious if there was ever a point in the development of this in which you or he considered having him do something like that, or narrate a little more than just the opening credits for this show.
There was really no time and no budget to make him up to do something creepy. So Between mostly it was a matter of he was on the clock for delivering some soundtrack stuff and everything else. And, it was really down to the wire on getting these episodes delivered. So you couldn't really play around too much.
Well, I'm glad that his voice at least shows up in there,
yes.
and especially the music as well. I mean, his music can never disappoint. So I am very excited to spread the word about this show. I think horror genre fans as well as just general true story fans are going to love it. So Sandy, thank you so much for taking the time. I greatly appreciate it.